Did you like the Michael Bay Transformers movies?
No.
Did you want to see more?
No.
Did you want to see two more wrapped into one movie?
Do you understand the meaning of the word no?
We're the Brothers Herman, and we just saw Transformers: Age of Extinction.
What exactly was the extinction of, anyway? I mean, I saw dinosaurs go extinct, but they were like in the movie for like 20 seconds. Was it the Transformers? Because they lived. Who went extinct here?
Did the Fallen really get revenge?
Yes.
Was the moon really dark?
I don't know, I never watched the movie.
Neither did I. Alright, having not seen the third movie, we can't compare it to that, but comparing to the original two, well, I'd like to say it is the best Michael Bay Transformers movie I have yet seen. In fact, I will say that. That is, however, damning with faint praise.
Which itself might be too much of an understatement.
Indeed. But I will say, and this cannot be overstated, this time around, Michael Bay actually managed to make a movie. So, there are a lot of pros, comparative pros, and a lot of cons, by any standards. Actually, there were no Decepticons. Spoilers. Plotline-wise, positive, I can say. First third of the movie actually paced very well, made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was probably the most engrossing moment, and I say this was actually the setup for a really good movie. I mean, honestly, the first third of the movie felt like the setup for a feel-good movie of the year kind of deal, and it could have really worked with Transformers.
After that, it loses touch. There were, like I said earlier, there was enough here to make two separate movies. And while it sort of kind of fit together, there were way too many plot threads. Now, we're not talking like Transformers 1, all these little micro plot threads that don't really mean anything. They're full-on plot threads, but there are way too many of them.
Honestly, the major problem is you have you basically have four storylines, but you have two sort of interconnecting storylines over here, and two interconnecting storylines over here. They touch tangentially right here, but otherwise they're not connected. And you feel like half the time, why am I watching this?
You forgot out of nowhere plotline towards the end, and family plotline towards the beginning.
And they hate Steve Jobs.
And redemption storyline for Steve Jobs. We, by the way, for the most part, did not know the names of the characters in this movie.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I'm just calling him Steve Jobs because that's basically what he was acting like.
There was Mark Wahlberg, Steve Jobs, Jailbait, annoying friend who dies. Sorry, spoilers.
Race car driver who happens to be the jailbait's boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. The only characters I really knew the names of were Optimus and Bumblebee, and one other that, for some reason, I'm not spoiling. And that leads me to the biggest flaw with the characters, which is they're not consistent at all. I can't think of a single one that is the same character all the way through or growing in normal ways. In fact, I think most of them developed weird character flaws that came out of nowhere and left just as suddenly.
And this is no more typified than in what happens to be, in my opinion, the stupidest scene of the movie, where Optimus Prime suddenly decides that all humans are terrible, and why should I go about saving you?
It has to be, talked up by, an inspirational speech. I will, on the flip side, say, dialogue-wise, as far as the characters go, they were much better.
Now, that's not to say the dialogue was good, by any stretch of the imagination.
But you'd be surprised at how much life Mark Wahlberg can read into a really stupid line.
I mean, honestly, Mark Wahlberg had me thinking this was going to be a good movie for, 10 minutes, and I know that sounds terrible for a 2-hour, 40-minute flick, but at the same time, that's more time than any Michael Bay film has given me in the past.
Exactly. I will also say, oh my God, one of the things about this movie, probably the highest praise I can give it, is I was disgusted by the first two movies. How the franchise was treated, how characters in general were treated. The characters were soul-searing in their annoyingness. Sam's parents, really made me want to get up and leave. And the Autobots and Decepticons had no dignity to them at all. There's nothing here celebrating, the characters, the franchise. And I've watched a lot of different Transformers series that take different takes on characters, different approaches to the material, some good, some bad. This, those movies were just awful. There's nothing like that in this movie. There are a few moments that start to move towards just celebrating, but then they veer away. There's no characters that I go, oh my god, you're pissing on everything that Transformers is, and nothing that made me go, why am I watching this?
On the other hand, outside of characters, there was something that made me go, why am I watching this? And that was about time mark 2 hours and 2 minutes, when I honestly saw an action scene and thought to myself, man, I don't want to be here anymore.
Action fatigue is a huge deal in this movie. And it shouldn't be. You should never actually reach a saturation point with action. But it happens.
I want you to consider this. Optimus Prime, wielding what is essentially a glorified medieval sword, riding a dinosaur, is boring.
Yeah, shouldn't happen. It kind of is. I think it would be better if we were more involved, or if the action scenes seemed like there was more at stake.
Had meaning in the first place.
Yeah, it's like they should seem like there's stuff at stake, but honestly, like it all blends together. Also, the CGI made a lot of the action scenes a pain to sit through. There's that thing in the trailers with Optimus Prime riding the dinosaur, and there's so much put into the dinosaur, it's easy to overlook the fact that Optimus Prime himself doesn't look that good in that shot, that they skimped out on the CGI here and there. And their shaky cam is unforgivable. It probably would be easier to ignore if it was throughout, but it's shaky cam, not shaky cam, shaky cam, not shaky cam. And there's no good reason. Shaky cam on this tense scene walking through a hallway, not shaky cam when we're jumping down the side of a building.
But then shaky cam again.
But then shaky cam when we're jumping down the side of the building again too. So what the hell?
Now I will give both a positive and negative at the same time. The negative, Michael Bay once again ripped off other movies. The positive, at least he chose good movies to rip off. So he ripped off the falling scene from the first Die Hard movie. And he ripped off the supervillain's plan from the most recent Superman movie. Well, okay, I said good movies, but that's a relative term.
Yeah.
But he still ripped them off. It was literally scene for scene, the same freaking storyline.
I will also say that, the characters were not soul-searing. They did not leap off the page the way they could. There's only so much you can do with bad dialogue, and honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a John Goodman performance so lackluster.
My gosh, he sounded wooden.
Yeah, he really did. On the plus side, there is a fight scene involving Transformers and humans, and aside from one really ridiculous thing involving a parry that physics, even for this movie's physics, is defying belief. It was the most believable I've ever seen humans involved in Transformers fight scene.
It might even be the most effective Transformers fight scene of the last 4 movies, with the caveat that I haven't seen anything from Dark of the Moon.
Incidentally, action fatigue did not kill that scene for me, so that's what I mean by, there has to be something at stake here.
One other good scene, and I say good, and again, it's a relative term, as everything is with this movie. There's one scene with the absolute stupidest line imaginable. And Mark Wahlberg takes that line, he opens a can of beer, drinks it, spits on it, and then throws the can of beer at it. And I'm not even using that figuratively, that's literally what he does.
And I really like to think it was Mark Wahlberg ad-libbing, because the line he's responding to is so stupid that, honestly, it's my favorite scene in the movie because it almost feels like they were calling out the guy who wrote the line.
Yeah.
So, final pros. The Transformers were identifiable. They were they had character flaws, but there's nothing wrong with that. They were not pissing on the entire idea of what it is to be Transformers. They had dignity, and they were kind of fun, even when they were assholes.
And Mark Wahlberg, I never thought I'd say this, is a dang good actor if he can breathe life into what should have been the most cringe-inducing lines imaginable.
And I will say, if you had to invoke a certain famous name that I will not mention from the Transformers series, this was a pretty ingenious way of doing it without getting into a whole lot of baggage.
Final cons. The Transformers' motivations were inscrutable. The plot lines made no sense tied together. They should have been two separate movies. The action fatigue wears in at about the 2-hour mark for a 2-hour and 40-minute movie.
Final score, I would say 4 out of 10.
I would say a 3 out of 10.
We're around the same level. It's watchable once. You're probably not going to want to come back to this again and again and again, but especially if you can have fun at cheesy bad movies. And especially if you like, talking through the movies and mocking them, this is a fun one to do that with.
This is the kind of movie that, if it had gone a different way, I could have easily seen giving this you'll have fun watching a stupid movie. And that's about an hour and a half through the movie. But, unfortunately, action fatigue sets in.
Yeah.
And it just becomes, why am I sitting here? And
Yeah.
that is what ultimately drags it down for me. So a 3 out of 10 for me, a 4 out of 10 for Amnesis.
Yeah. And I will credit Michael Bay with one thing. He has elevated from terrible to bad action movie.
Really bad action movie.
And that's actually a huge step up for him.
What does that say about him?
I know. So, from the Brothers Herman, keep watching movies and we'll see you next time. Sweetie, get Daddy's alien gun.